Hey, this is Neil. It's May 19th, 2024, and this is a little video for just walk in the woods development. I'm cranking on the MVP JavaScript library, which I want to build up so that I can quickly prototype different UIs and different user flows for the same backend. In this case, for Surfey, and if you've seen the Surfey MVP, it goes something like this. You upload a video, but you need to be logged in order for any of this stuff to work. And so really the driving force behind some of this stuff is just making it really easy for me to write semantic HTML and vanilla JavaScript so that I can build these UIs. And one of the things you might have seen is the login, which I've now moved into a module, and I'm already logged in, so that's not going to do anything. Let's remove this cookie and reload. Being able to build up these buttons and set up all the stuff that's necessary for that to work is kind of a pain in the butt. And rather than copy and pasting between files, I wanted the ability to load HTML sources between my little prototypes, and this led me down the path of the failed imports functionality in the specification. It died like in 2015, and so what you end up having to do is actually write your own JavaScript code to use the shadow DOM and template stuff and pull stuff in using fetch and then evaluate the scripts. And thankfully, because I've done a lot of the work with rerun and fetcher, I can now combine those to support modules. So as an example, and so I just created a function called load. I can load my test component, and the second parameter here I'm specifying is what kind of component it is, and the kind is really just the tag. So if we want to look at the source code for this, let's move this into open in Chrome. Looking at component test, you'll see that I have a bunch of markup above and below the actual component, but the component itself is just a section. And I can load it by ID or I can load it by tag name. It really uses whatever the LE function that I wrote can handle, and so that means it's really probably too flexible, but also simple enough to use. I mean, you could see the way that I used it there. And this allowed me to write something like the login modal. I just kind of ripped it out and stuck it in its own file and jerry-rigged it back together. It's not fully working with the way the flow works, but for demonstration purposes, I think it's pretty good. The other fun thing I just, of course, had to do is I hate writing a lot of HTML for just content. I think writing Markdown is much easier to put in a lot of content. And thankfully, using that marked library and then combining it with what I've already got built with the LE function, I'm able to create a one-liner that just turns the Markdown found in the document to the document while preserving the actual module piece that I want as well. I'm saying component rather than module because I don't want to get confused in my mind or anyone else's that this is JavaScript. This is not JavaScript, this is HTML, which can include JavaScript. And so that was one of the fun things that I found is when you import something and put it into the shadow DOM, it doesn't actually run any of the scripts. But that wasn't a problem because I already created that rerun function which runs all the scripts. So all these little scripts get run, and it will obey this only after the first time so that you can rerun Dialogs. And that's something else that's in Scratch. Maybe I'll show that, but see, we can click login. We're already logged in. If we were to delete this token and refresh the page and log in, it requires us to log in, and then we can see, okay, that worked. And log out will delete the cookie, but the login dialog saves the user, and so it just kind of goes in an infinite loop at that point. But refreshing the page works. So we can try sign in with Apple. So not only can I use this component in other pages, but now I can also test the component on its own page at the same time. So I don't have to create any kind of crazy test harness. What I have wanted to be able to do forever, and that's where a lot of this work in the MVP JavaScript library has come from, is just combine the markup and script tags, because HTML can already do that, into one chunk, and that's the app or the component or whatever, and it just makes sense. It's something that I can step through in a debugger, and I can move that stuff around much more easily. So pretty cool stuff. What else is there? I also have some dialogue stuff that I've worked on last week, and so you can see this with this this prompt dialogue, and so it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right? But if I type in error, you'll see it doesn't let me close, and that's because it's running some kind of validation. So if we look at and you can't cancel, right? Nope, can't exit. If we look at Scratch, how this is going down, I've created a generic dialogue portion thing, again, a component that has a title and description in it that allows me to fill it in with whatever I want. So I just want to be able to prompt someone and not make it look ugly. So instead of saying name equals prompt this, you'll see this is pretty ugly, right? I want it to be able to do something pretty close, but not quite so ugly. So I have prompt dialog as the little module. So let's just take a look at what that looks like. So if I say await dialog, prompt dialog, you can see I've already done a little bit of this. This is the prompt. But I can pass in arguments, so I can give it a title. And I can also give it a description. And that's pretty cool. And then you can set up validation, which right now I just have some very generic validation so that if you type in the word error, it will prevent it from closing. But all this stuff is optional. If you wanted a very simple, just templated dialogue thing, you could eliminate all of this except for this part here, which just takes the title and description you pass in, and you can see it's just setting the inner text of stuff. So there's nothing complicated going on here. And again, this is kind of its own deal. A lot of the functions are big concepts, but reusable functions. So the function is attaching data to the object in the DOM, but separate from the DOM, so that object can be changed, but the data itself can stay consistent. So you can see I'm setting prevent close on the object, which is associated with the dialog. And then another function here, which is fun, is current. And current uses the current executing script to figure out what element you're talking about. So when I say current dialog, it unwinds the hierarchy here to find the dialog tag that's above the currently running script, and then use that portion. And what this allows is you can have reusable functionality and components that aren't dependent on identifiers or classes, which could cause conflicts in the rest of your application. It can really just be completely relative and constrained within the component, which I think is really cool. One gotcha with the current concept is if you're inside a function, so the execution context is the function, there's no current script running. It's the function is the context running, and so this would return a null, which would be really confusing, and that has confused me a lot. So that's like a brief tour of some of the cool stuff. We've got components, we've got the ability to attach data to these components, to find elements related to the script running, and being able to configure dialogues with script pretty simply. I've gone through a lot of variations of how I wanted this to look, and I think I'm happy with this. And yeah, it's coming along nicely. Just wanted to kind of draw something in the sand, as it were, before I move on, because it's just been a heck of a lot of churn. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys on the flip side.